Harvard Divinity School.
Uses and abuses of power in alternative spiritualities. Implications for spiritual care of patients and communities. April 28, 2023.
So before I start, I want to say something about my that's a good idea. My engagement with ayahuasca. My early work was in India, and I wrote my thesis across the street at the Center for Study of World Religion. So this is a very meaningful place for me. It was extremely nurturing space. Anyway, you know, I changed. I met a representative from a Peruvian NGO at an international conference in Montreal, and I was fascinated by what he was saying. So we invited him. My ex and I were collaborating with an international scholarly group, and they came for 2 years, and then they invited me to go. That's how I ended up in Peru. I had never been to South America. And because of my experience in India, I decided I did not want to read all the ethnographies on this place. And I was asked to collaborate with this group that taught a course for people who worked, so that it took place kind of 5 times a year, and I would go and I would lecture. Anyway, I collaborated with this NGO for 10 years. I went to Peru for the first time in 1994, and they immediately or very soon told me, you know, you have to do ayahuasca. I said, what's ayahuasca? Just do it. I had no idea. I had never taken a psychedelic. The only thing I had is a joint once in a while in a party. So I had zilch background. But they said, you have to do that. And I began with them to take ayahuasca soon thereafter, and discovered that I wanted to continue. I knew right away, or very quickly, that this was a path where I could grow spiritually, as well as healing myself of certain things. So I've been doing this ever since 1994. And after I retired in 2007, retired early so that I could do what I really loved, I founded my own center in the place where my collaborators and my hosts had constructed the center. But we parted ways, and so I constructed my own center. And Randy Chungonzales, was the son of my right-hand woman there, and I was teaching study abroad courses during a vacation, university vacation, and that's how I supported this center. And Randy is her son. And so he's been involved there from the very beginning, involved with my courses since he's 15 years old. He's now 40. And the thing that totally changed both our lives was that in 2016, I insisted he accompany me. I had some students who were there for a short while, and they wanted to do ayahuasca in a place I did not know, that was a little bit far. And I did not want to go alone with people I did not really know well. And he didn't want to go, but I insisted, and he went. And at that ceremony, he was initiated by discarnate beings. And this initiation, or the intense part of it, lasted 3.5 years. And he was given powers, he was given protections. And being a painter and a drawer, in our book, which just came out, he has illustrated his vision. And that's That's also his painting on the cover of the book. And so this is, kind of the context where I come from and my knowledge of ayahuasca. I never wanted to write about my experiences with ayahuasca. I didn't want to make this spiritual practice an object of study, an ethnography. But when this happened to Randy and he would tell me what was happening, it was so amazing. It was nothing like what was happening to me or anybody I'd ever heard of. He was being initiated, and they told him that with in no uncertain terms, directly. And he was telling me these things, and it was just amazing. So and when I listened to him, I was so amazed, my jaw actually dropped. So we arranged for a quiet time and a place where he could tell me everything, and I wrote it down. So a third of this book is his book. Of course, I've translated, he doesn't speak English. And he is a mestizo, what's known as mestizo in Latin America, which literally means mixed blood. Part Chinese, his great-grandfather came from China, married an indigenous woman, and then his mother is mestizo, blah, blah, blah. So the reason I'm saying that is that he did not identify as an indigenous Quechua Lamas, which are the indigenous group in that area where my center is, in the Upper Amazon. And and furthermore, his parents were totally secular, which is very unusual in this region. And so he grew up with nothing, no religion at all. And he was not particularly interested in indigenous spirituality or culture. So I did not expect that to happen, but it did. He did not want it. He tried to refuse, could not. And it started with the 8 burly men trying to kill him. And when I reread Mircea Eliade's classic book on shamanism, this is typical. He thought he was going to die. Anyway, he didn't die. He tried halfway through the first 3.5 years to quit. And again, they did not let him. So that's where I have my information. So a very long time of my own youth, but from Randy, who's very close to me and is the head of the center now in Peru. I'm the head in the US of the nonprofit. So what I want to say very briefly now, before I start more specifically, is came to me through a conversation with one of the participants that I had, I think, day before yesterday, Dolores Mondragon, an indigenous woman who's here and is presenting, I think, tomorrow. She couldn't be here this morning. She was sick, very unwell. So she reminded me very nicely. She did it in such a wonderful way that I said, it started a deep reflection for me. The term shamanism is being rejected in particular by indigenous people of the Americas as a term imposed by the dominant society. It's not their term. And if I'm not mistaken, or at least that's my belief, I may be mistaken, it's a term coined by Mircea Eliade in his classic book, Shamanism, and it's a term that comes from a particular Siberian indigenous group. And what I reflected upon is the following. Before the creation of this term, shaman, which was argued captures a phenomenon that's worldwide. There is no culture that has not had shamanism. And it gives it a name, which is this name borrowed from an indigenous group in Siberia. What I realized after my conversation with Dolores is that, and there, how do I do the next slide? Here. Just click on. No.
Frederic, if you go into presentation mode,
Where is presentation? Where do I find presentation? Sorry.
This is presentation.
Oh,
Okay, so go ahead. Thank you very much. Yeah. Then you should be able to just advance.
Okay, so what I realized, because this is not, I do a little bit of history in this book. Well, I do quite a bit actually, but I have several other books, these two, in which I've done much more history, especially around the so-called scientific revolution. I use Rupert Sheldrake's term for it, the mechanistic revolution. Mechanistic revolution. And what I realized is that there was no term, general term, that was neutral as to its evaluation. All the terms that existed, certainly in Europe and the Americas, were terms like sorcerer, witch, sorceress. These were the term used. The reason being, which is now on showing on the PowerPoint, Pope Innocent VIII in 1484 declared witches and sorcerers to be heretics, so you could kill them. The pursuit of them started before that date, quite before, but then it got kind of official sustenance. As it were. In what happened in what is today Peru, they and here I have a quote, very shortly after the arrival of the first invader, Francisco Pizarro, in 1532. In what is today Callao, the port of Lima. In 1545, the Archbishop Jerónimo Loaiza dictated the laws of extirpation of idolatry. And we have this quote there, from Loaiza, they will work to find out if they are sorcerers, they will work, people who work for him. Sorcerers or Indians who have communication with the devil and speak with him, and in that way enlighten them and remove this blindness and stupidity, making them understand the great offense to God and having communication with the devil, and then believing the lies he tells. So this stayed in the books. It's not still in the books today, actually. They are not enforced anymore. But during the Republican Revolution, when Peru became an independent nation in 1832, they were still enforced. And the legacy of this is absolutely alive in the vernacular language of this little town in the Amazon, where my center is Lamas, in the department of San Martin, in the northeast of Peru. The people call, in the vernacular way of calling a shaman, they call him brujo, which means sorcerer. And if it's a man and if it's a woman, it's bruja, sorceress, which is, so it's a way of speaking. And they also call the local Quechua Lamas speak Quechua, the local variant of Quechua. They call, they translate, but they don't translate. This is how people talk. Supay is the Quechua word for the spirit. And in Spanish, it becomes diablo or demonio, devil. So they speak of devil.
And the indigenous Quechua Lamas and others of the region have repeatedly asked to change the name of the mountain range that dominates the region, which has a Spanish name, Cordillera Escalera, to its original Quechua name, which is Supa, spirit, and they have been refused to this day. So what I'm saying is that certainly in Peru, that I know better than in other places, in Latin America, and traveled to other places, the legacy of extirpation of idolatry is very alive. It's in the language. In Europe, and I know France better than other places in Europe, things have changed more. Thank you so much.
They can't hear you on.
Hello? Hello?
Is that any better? They can't hear you online. Just try it.
Oh, well, I understand that.
When people hear, oh yeah, this is definitely working. This one wasn't working. So, yeah, and it's not only the Catholic, the Roman Catholic Church, Western European Catholicism that we're talking about. The same was with the Protestants. The Lutherans eradicated shamanism in Scandinavia. I visited friends, Sami friends from northern Sweden, who took me to their community museum, and it was a horror show, showing very graphically how the state of Sweden, where the official religion is Lutheran, had brutally eradicated, and very late in the 18th century. So it was recent memory, as it were. And in France, I mean, there's a lot of research and scholarship, some of it, I've referred to it, on witchcraft. The information comes from the Inquisition generally, and on that basis, they, but it's been, it's been successfully eradicated. I mean, friends of mine say, Wiccan friends of mine say, no, it's gone underground. And that's possible, but nobody declares themselves to be a witch, certainly not in France. In New England, I have this, the Puritans of New England had that same attitude, totally. When I first moved to where I lived when I was married, near Smith in Western Mass, the local library had made a exhibition of some historical documents. And I went and I looked, and they were folded so I couldn't see. So the lady said, well, I'll show it to you. I didn't show it because I am ashamed, and she should be, we should all be ashamed. These letters basically said, and I forget the exact amount, but something to the effect that for the head of a man of an indigenous Sakata, I forget the name of the indigenous group, it's a complicated name, it's £1, and for the head of a woman, it's £50, and for the head of a child, it's so much money. So this is in Massachusetts, around the corner from here. So, and this is what John Winthrop said and did. So what I'm trying to highlight before going further with my presentation is that the only terms and the only attitude towards what now is called shamanism was absolutely derogatory, profoundly derogatory, witchcraft, brujeria. And in terms of the indigenous terms, the two that I know, and maybe you know the Shipibo term, but the Ashaninka of Amazonia, Peruvian Amazonia, call a shaman Shiripiari. The Quechua lamas and Quechua from that region called him or her Yachak. So there's different terms for different linguistic groups to indicate such a person. The same in Europe. Different linguistic groups have different terms. And I'm not talking about national languages, but regional languages. So each region and its language had a different term. So what have come to the conclusion that the term, which I believe was coined by Mircea Eliade, I'm not 100% sure on that. I didn't have time to go back and check all these facts, was the first time that there was a term that was neutral, that did not convey that this was a horrible thing to do, the equivalent of the end term today, something like that. So that's one thing. And the other is when I started writing this book with Randy, Randy has a central part in it, I began to think about the eradication of, first of all, the ancient history of shamanism. Shamanism made us Homo sapiens sapiens, that it is as big as this. The paintings in the Paleolithic cave, the oldest caves, 40,000, 10 minutes, okay, 40,000 years ago, already have paintings that have been identified as representing shamanic gestures, actions. But since the Roman Emperor Constantine became Christian in 312 or 16, thereabout, and made Christianity the empire's religion, by the end of the 4th century, by 394, 6, the Eleusinian mysteries that were referred to yesterday, that lasted 2,000 years in ancient Greece, about in the temple of Demeter and Persephone, mother-daughter, were closed, as were all goddess temples. And also the women were totally taken out of Christian priesthood completely. And well, there's more to be said, but that's enough. It's to say that shamanism, psychedelics, trance have been always there, but with the empire making Christianity its religion, it has been suppressed and made heretical. Not right away, but the result is that if there are any shaman or shamanesses left in Europe, they are well hidden. And I'm not talking about the Wiccan, the neo-shamanism movement. So now let me just go more to the, let's see. Yes, this is one of his illustration in the book, line drawings, where actually this apparition, and he drew it, and I could tell the man was an Ashaninka from the way he was dressed, who tried to give him from his mouth to Randy's mouth, and Randy just freaked out. The man disappeared, but Randy went to a friend, and the friend said, look, if he comes again, open your mouth because he's trying to give you his yachai. So the word yachai, substantive, means knowledge / power. And that's where the word yachak for a shaman comes from. It's a person with yachai. And the next one, doesn't want to change. Yes, it's very interesting how Randy, I'm very close to a center in the nearby city, half an hour away, called Takiwasi, founded by a French MD who apprenticed with shamans about 35 years ago and became a shaman. And in a ceremony, he was told by the spirits who identify themselves as the spirit of the forest to reciprocate by healing drug addiction, which was a lot because that's a place where you grow coca, is the upper Amazon. And there was a lot of cocaine traffic and lots of people got addicted. So this Jacques Mabit, become a friend, wanted to know if this Ashaninka master who had come to Randy was a sorcerer or not. And so he was doing an exorcism basically on Randy, and while he was being exorcised, he had a vision, he had his eyes closed, and he's telling Jacques what he's seeing. I'm seeing a woman with, copper color skin like mine, very beautiful, and with a mantle and this and that. And Jacques said, open your eyes, shows him a picture of La Virgen de Guadalupe. And then he says, yeah, that's the woman I saw. No idea who she was. Then he also, this is another vision of his, much later. Behind the eagle, you see a tilted pyramid, 5 minutes. A tilted pyramid, which is the sacred mountain of the Quichua Lamas. And it means, Wamanwasi is the name, and it means the house of the eagle. And an eagle came to Randy, who called it and gave him powers to take through kind of snake-like hand. And he took it, and it was very, very hard. But now I'll come to the main thing. And then, yeah, this is his first dieta. And the Ashaninka master comes, he was suffering and is healing him. And then negative. So in one session with an older friend of his, an ayahuasca session, out of the friend's body comes this entity with a saber. And the entity gives him what's known in Spanish as virote, which in English is called a magical dart. And Rani goes home and he suffers so, and it got worse and worse and worse to the point where he could not stand the pain. And his mother sent him to her doctor. The doctor said, it must be kidney stones, go have a ultrasound done, etc. And he needed relief, and finally found relief with a woman, told him to do something very simple. He did it and was relief. And then the next day he went done ultrasound and he has perfectly fine kidneys. Okay, so I will simply, that's another negative, a very famous shaman, Peruvian Shipibo shaman appears to him and sends a snake, and as a result makes him blind. Shamanically, it means he cannot have any visions. And he gets cured of that also, but it was difficult. So the point, very quickly to conclude, is that evil and harm exists in the world. And when the way that people speak in ayahuasca ceremony, you go al otro lado, you go to the other side, the side beyond death. On that other side, you can find healing and you can find harm. And some shamans deal in both and some specialize in harming. Randy was given a choice the day of his initiation, and he chose, he didn't know that was the choice, but it turned out he chose only the healing path. So he does no sorcery. But this is all to say that, if you come, I don't know how you got to your center of the Shipibo. If you come to Peru or any Amazonian country looking for psychedelic experiences, you have to inquire. Don't rely on websites because you don't know. And you have to inquire locally because because there's so many people coming down, it's so popular that unscrupulous persons are making it a business and are not very well trained and I don't know. And some terrible things have happened. Very few, but they have, as well as sexual with women. On the whole, I mean, certainly my experience, which is more than 25 years, and Randy's experience has been extremely positive, but I know through Jacques Mabit, through Randy and other friends, that there have been some serious, in one case, very serious death events. So my conclusion is that, in the invisible world, there is both evil and good. And the church, the Catholic Church, as well as the Protestant churches, have decided that God is all good and that therefore the bad is only with Satan. So there's a sharp dualism between good and bad. And the sequel of this view is in the language, certainly in Latin America, but I think everywhere. And it is extremely important to gather information locally about which person you're going to go visit and who they are and what do they do. Thank you very much.
Sponsored by the Program for the Evolution of Spirituality.
Copyright 2023, the President and Fellows of Harvard College.